This is Flick.
This is Rudy.
And this week on Left of the Dial podcast, episode 30, we'll be talking about magnetic fields and guided by voices. It's another edition of I'm Gonna Make You Love Me. Rudy has a list from magnetic fields that he wants me to listen to, and I have a list of guided by voices to try and convert him. In addition, we'll be talking about new music from Fiona Apple, Waxahatchee, Enemy Radio, as well as new singles from Built to Spill, Woods, and Sleeper, as well as Bob Dylan. That's coming up next on episode 30 of Left of the Dial podcast.
All right, this one you may well know, you may not know it, and if you don't know it, I really don't know where you've been.
You forgot? Forgot the magnetism of Robin Zander or the charisma of Rick Nielsen?
That's kid stuff.
It's just come up to 5:35 a.m. Kommen Sie bitte und listen to Kraftwerk.
I don't know, man. I kind of like Van Halen.
Well, yeah, Plum, you do. And you know why you do? Because corporate America is shoving something down your throat and making you believe it because that's what they want you to believe. I mean...
Okay, buddy. I was just trying to cheer us up, so go ahead. Put on some old sad bastard music, see if I care.
That was Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell, a song in which Joni complains that they paved Paradise to put up a parking lot. A measure which actually would have alleviated traffic congestion on the outskirts of Paradise, something which Joni singularly fails to point out, perhaps because it doesn't quite fit in with her blinkered view of the world. Nevertheless, nice song.
How about the tunes? I want you to want me. The dream police. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Your mama's alright. Your daddy's alright.
I get by because the people make a special effort to shop here. Mostly young men who spend all their time looking for deleted Smith singles and original, not re-released underline Frank Zappa albums.
Gang. Yes. I mean, look, you can play an E pentatonic scale at 100 miles an hour till somebody's ears burn off. You can learn that, right? But finding the tangents within the framework, therein lies the artistry, man.
God made your ears. You didn't make them. You gonna argue with God's ears? If it sound good and it feel good, then it's musical. So play it like I say play it. From the top.
That was Sweating Lunatic Iggy Pop, part of our Tuesday night punk pack, which is climaxing at midnight with Madness. This is Norfolk Nights with Alan Partridge, and we're in the middle of Super Talk. Super Talk!
Welcome to episode 30 of the Left of the Dial podcast. A lot to talk about this week. The main gist of this program is it's another edition of I'm Gonna Make You Love Me. This week, I am going to try and convert Rudy to Guided by Voices, one of my favorite bands, and he gave me a playlist of the magnetic fields.
I'm seeking converts. Yes, I want to convert you to the way. I think I would put them as certainly among the of active bands. They're among my all-time favorites. So yes, I want to convert for sure. We haven't talked new music in depth in a while. I think we're gonna go in hard on that. But unfortunately, we have to start by talking about the gross COVID-19 virus and the impact it's had on music. In this case, we lose the bass player from the Soft Boys, Matthew Seligman, also known for, I know him from playing with some Robin Hitchcock solo stuff, which I've liked, and he also played on the Thomas Dolby album with Hyperactive, the Flat Earth, I believe that's called. That's a fantastic record, and his bass playing is fantastic. But he really got around. He played a lot of places.
Yeah, so he joined the Soft Boys, and we should mention he died this past week at age 64 of the COVID-19 virus. He joined the Soft Boys on Underwater Moonlight in 1980. Really, the best Soft Boys record. think that's pretty much a consensus. That's a classic. He was a member of the Thompson Twins from 1981 to 82. And also, kind of more on a personal note, because I'm a big star and Alex Chilton fan, he was on the Alex Chilton album Live in London. So we've included a couple of things from that list on our playlist on Spotify.
Yep. It sucks to lose another great artist to a disease. It just sucks all the way around. More upbeat, perhaps. We have been blessed with some new music. Not everybody who's it's a tough time if you're in the film business right now, in a way that it's not for music. We don't get live music now, but we are still getting new music, and I would say we're still getting some really good new music to keep the music nerd occupied during the contagion.
Yeah, it's hard to say what kind of impact everything will have on the recording industry going forward. A lot of what's coming out now probably was recorded before there were really any issues. And yeah, certainly you can still do things. A lot of bands have the access to record at home in some relatively high quality and the way technology is now. But it, like everything else, it surely will have its impact.
Yeah, have you watched any of the online music events? Like, did you watch the concert for the world this weekend?
I didn't watch. This morning I did see the Rolling Stones, the live version of "You Can't Always Get What You Want," which not so great because a lot of times they're actually out of sync with each other. It didn't quite work.
Yeah.
All that well. It was interesting. It was kind of fun to watch, but yeah, I mean, the fact that they had a hard time staying in sync didn't make for the greatest performance for obvious reasons.
Which is interesting because, I mean, Mick Jagger's, the last time he got involved in a world event like that is with the absolutely dreadful cover of Dancing in the Street that he did with David Bowie. It's really 0 for 2, I think, in the Calamity events.
Well, I'm not going to say this was an offer. It was probably fine enough, but it's just one of those logistical things that didn't really pan out that well.
What if it's the last time they play?
Well, I guess you never know. I mean,
well, let's hope that's not. They were going to be in. Then Mick Jagger really did last summer. He was supposed to. They were going to play Soldier Field in Chicago on June 21st. I remember specifically because that's my birthday, and I thought, well, I've never seen the Rolling Stones. Seeing the Rolling Stones in Soldier Field would be. You kind of got to do that if you get a chance. And then they ended up having to cancel because Mick's health was bad. I had the feeling that we might have gotten another album or two out of them. I didn't think the Covers album was all that great. But I hope we get more Rolling Stones music. That'd be a drag if we don't.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I honestly haven't been staying up with them in recent years, but I'm certainly not going to not want Rolling Stones music where it's possible.
Well, our April rotation playlist on Spotify, it's under Left of the Dial Pod. Just look for it. Our April rotation is actually pretty chock full of new music, and it's been a really important week for new music. We want to talk. I think we first want to talk about Waxahatchee.
Fiona Apple.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. But we want to talk first about Fiona Apple because her new album, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, is getting quite a lot of press. It's really an album of the moment. It's kind of a big deal, as the kids say.
Yeah, and so I want to preface anything I have to say about this album with that I do like it. I do like it quite a bit. I would say I like it a lot. I would even say it's great. So put this out there because the way that I think things often get heard. it isn't necessarily what's intended, because I do think there is a bit of a problem with the hype machine on this album. I am not going to mention any names of critics or publications or anything like that, but it has been deemed a 10 out of 10. It has been deemed by another publication as a perfect album. I don't agree with that. It's not perfect, and it's not a 10. To me, I think a 10 is when somebody really drops. It really has to be a landmark achievement. It has to be a big step forward. I'll just put out examples. It's the Beach Boys when they did Pet Sounds. It's Prince when he did 1999. It's the Beatles when they did Rubber Soul. It's that kind of step forward that I think makes something a 10 out of 10. I think it's a great album again, and I want to keep on saying that. I don't have negative things to say about the album itself. My problem is only with the hype machine. But I think actually, to me, Fiona Apple had her biggest step forward on her sophomore album, When the Pawn. It's a very long title that, I think when I say When the Pawn, people know what I'm talking about. And that to me is where she kind of became the artist that she is. And unfortunately, over the years, we haven't got to see a whole lot of output from Fiona Apple. From her first to her second album, there were 3 years in between. And then from her second album to her third album, it was 6 years. Then it was 7 more years for the fourth, and now we've waited 8 years for Fetch the Bolt Cutters.
Yeah, I think you're a bigger fan of her than I am. I admit it's because of the coverage she's gotten and the fact that it rated a 10 out of 10. That it was an album I definitely would have gotten to anyway. I would have wanted to listen to, but having to, I think we're all stuck at home. I'm consuming way more internet than I normally would. You couldn't be on any sort of social media and music interested without seeing this album mentioned everywhere and praised effusively. I don't trust my ear sometimes. There are albums that I love and I love end to end and I think of as being like my favorite all-time records that I didn't love that way the first time through, or it took me a while to figure out or to understand. So sometimes I miss these. Like, it's possible that other people are just being hit by lightning by this album and just feel like they're hearing some revelatory thing. I do think she's taking some chances and they're interesting. At least the direction, the artistic freedom she is using to be free. She is really. There are times when you hear about artists wanting to negotiate artistic freedom, and you're like, really, to do that? Like, what were you missing? But in this case, she takes some real chances, but she's done that before. Like, they're new chances, but she does take risks in her music in general, so
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not that blown away by that part.
Well, yeah, I mean that's kind of what I'm getting at. And again, I feel like so what you talked about there, where it's just like your perception of her is affected by the media.
Yeah.
And I think that that's why I have such a problem with this getting 10s out of 10s and being called a perfect album, is because it causes it causes this sort of I think false God making in on one side, and then it causes a backlash on the other side, and neither of those things are deserved. I think again, it's a great album, but yeah, I mean, I any chances that she's taken here, I feel like I've heard her take in the past. That's why I think When the Pawn was like her biggest step forward in her career, and I don't really feel like there's much here. There are some things here that I think maybe she didn't even do back then. Like a lot of it has to do with musical arrangements. I think there's a lot of instrumentation here that's very inventive, very outside the box, and great. And so I'm not saying she isn't taking any risks on this album, but I think the biggest risks that she has taken, she's already taken in her career before.
Yeah. Well, we're not mentioning this publication, and I'm not trying to break the fourth wall or go too kayfabe here, but that is a publication that reviews musicians more than it reviews music, and they're even starting to redo their reviews if they're starting to review the same album twice and giving people demerits for being ugly people. That's not going to work out in the long run. But I a 10 out of 10 from that publication is a weighty thing, and I understand what you're saying, but how is anybody ever going to avoid this problem? Do you know what I mean? Like, the expectations now for this album are really high. You know what I mean? They're really high. I don't know if is that what she bargained for? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I really couldn't tell you whether this is working, like, from her perspective on things. I don't know if this is working for or against her, really. It's just my own personal perception. I think it's a great album. It should just be taken on its own merits, and don't go. I just want to stress, don't go in with expectations of a 10. And just take it as it is. It is a great album. I have down the tracks that I really liked from this, and there are seven tracks on my list here that I felt were particularly strong, and that's definitely the mark of a great album.
I usually have to have a listen to an album in a car while driving, particularly a long distance drive, before I form final opinions on it. I know that's weird, but all the albums I love are like usually great taken as whole albums, and I don't know. I usually do that in the car. So until I've driven around listening to the thing, I don't know exactly if I'm willing to quite go 10 out of 10. It's clearly great, and she's clearly talented, but is it perfect? Is there really nothing missing? Is there nothing that could be taken away? Nothing could be added? I don't know.
Well, I will list the tracks I really liked a lot off of this. The title track, "Fetch the Bolt Cutters," that's a good one. I really like the echoey vocals on that. I thought that was pretty brilliant. "I Want You to Love Me," Shamika says, "I Have Potential," "Rack of His," "Ladies," and "Cosmonauts." I think "Ladies" actually was the one from the first listen to the second listen that kind of took a little bit of a leap forward for me and became maybe my favorite track off the album.
There was not a preview track, right? I'm pretty sure there wasn't.
I wasn't aware of it if there was.
Yeah, I don't think there was. This publication, which shall not be named, also did a single review of Cosmonauts, which I believe is sort of the de facto first single. Or I think there maybe there's a video for. I don't know. I know you hate this, Mr. Flick, but looking at her listening stats on Spotify, "Criminal" has 50 million listens, which is a fairly substantial number, and nothing else has even 1.2 million listens. So this is
"Criminals" from her debut album.
Right.
Which I don't think is a bad album. I think. I think actually the fourth one is the one I like the least. And I let me see. I don't have the title of that one, and that's another one. Her titles are not the easiest ones to commit to memory.
Yeah, I think they're pretentious and ridiculous. That's just a personal. They're embarrassing and cringy, in my opinion. But I don't know if I'm the intended audience.
Possibly not, but anyway, her fourth album is definitely the one I like the least, and then after that, it's probably the debut. Well, no, I wouldn't say probably. It's definitely the debut would be the second to the bottom.
Well, she's I think a capital A artist, and whenever a capital A artist also gets some love from the popular culture or is able to, somebody who's true to their art is also able to be commercially viable and reach a wider audience and bring people of maybe more pedestrian tastes with her. That is a victory. That is a good sign. That is a reason to be an optimist. So, if Fiona Apple is able to get some converts and bring some people aboard and open some ears, and I don't think anybody could claim she's insincere. I think she means it. She's real, and having her do well, I think, is a benefit to all. This feels like she's going to have a huge success, and she's earned it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fine successfully, or it's going to be successful. Not with the hype machine on this one, but I do like the album a lot. Okay, so our second album that we're discussing this week is called St. Cloud. It's the new album by Waxahatchee. Waxahatchee is Katie Crutchfield. Another album I really like a lot.
Yeah, I'm not a huge. I haven't followed every album particularly closely, but I really remember liking the one from 2013, the Cerulean Salt. I remember really digging that record, and she's grown a lot, and I must say I'm liking the new stuff more than I have some of the albums in between.
Yeah. So I pulled a few songs off of this one for our Spotify playlist. Arkadelphia, I think, is a very strong one. Can't Do Much, and Witches, which is like a cross between Fleetwood Mac and Lucinda Williams, which you can't go wrong with that.
No, the three songs that came out before the record are the ones I know the best. Can't Do Much was the last of the three, but Lilacs on Fire were both. I know I've been saying this lately. I feel like it's like the old Johnny Carson show when they'd be like, "Oh, the band has a lot of punch," But I love the way this record sounds. It sounds beautiful. It really just is a beautiful sounding record. And her last couple albums have been great sounding records, and I think the songwriting's here too. So you know the album better than I do, but I'm definitely going to dive in.
Yeah, and this is a good one, a really good one. You talk about road testing an album. This is definitely made for road testing.
Yeah,
it's a great one. If you have a long drive, this is a great album to be listening to on that drive.
I'm gonna have to take your word on that one. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't think.
Well, yeah, that's the irony these days.
Yeah.
Gas can be cheaper, but where are you gonna go?
Ain't that the truth? So it's been a big busy week. Are we ready to move on, or do you want to keep chatting? Do we have any albums to go to, or are we ready to talk singles? Because I'm dying just to get to Bob Dylan. So
I know you are, but I do have another album I want to mention. That's right. Enemy Radio, which is Public Enemy. Of course, Public Enemy. We all know who Public Enemy is, I believe, and then I think the name changed to Public Enemy Radio, and now it's just Enemy Radio, and the new album is Loud Is Not Enough. And it's really good. It's like my favorite Chuck D related thing in quite a while. And I've liked a lot of the Public Enemy stuff that has come along over the past few years. But I think this seems to be the strongest one I have heard in quite a while. Chuck D's in as good a form as ever, lyrically and vocally. It's not the Bomb Squad doing the beats and the samples and everything, but it is Bomb Squad quality level.
Really?
Yes.
All right, that's a bold statement, which I can't verify because I haven't listened to it yet. Public Enemy, when they're great, they're as good as it gets, but they do have some dead spots for me, at least career-wise. They can go a few stretches without at least without a memorable single. I'll say that. So if you're saying return to form or perhaps even better, that would be a big deal.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think okay. So using a big single as like a marking point, as a landmark, harder than you think. To me, it was like the last really great Public Enemy single. I love that song. Um, I would say this new album is my favorite thing since then.
All right, that's a bold pronouncement from you. You would still are. We're not even. Maybe we need a PE show at some point because I'm not even sure we agree on their greatest album.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree when somebody says It Takes a Nation, a Million is the best. I think for me, Fear of a Black Planet is
we do
probably
agree.
my favorite. Yeah,
we agree.
But you know, both of those I think are almost equal. Yeah, you can't go wrong with either of those two.
Yeah, and it sounds like the new ones. The new one may not be that caliber, but you're saying not a disappointing listen.
I'm not saying it's on that caliber because not much is, but yeah, it's definitely if you like Public Enemy, you definitely want to check it out for sure.
Did you make it to Flavor Flav's chicken restaurant in Clinton before it went under?
I did not.
No,
did not.
That's a missed opportunity.
Perhaps.
I tried to help you all I can.
You
all
won
right.
$6 for what?
Yeah. Kiss my butt. I think we're gonna have to do a more full-throated Dylan show at some point. Not because we don't cover him enough, but just because I think any excuse to talk about him is a good one. He did release a second song, original song for the year, and this is like the last. I think he goes 8 years without releasing one original song, and then he releases two within the first quarter in 2020, or within the first 4 months of 2020. I love the new one. I Contain Multitudes. It's a reference, Walt Whitman reference. I think it's pretty great. I understand it's also, though, it's another talking blues, another sort of long form talking blues from him, which not everybody's a huge fan of. I don't know if he put out an entire album of it. I think I'd get ear fatigue too. But I think I'm just excited by the content. I think lyrically it's as good as anything he's written in certainly this millennium. And he breaks character a little bit, or at least it's another one of these where he sort of directly addresses the fans, and he does that on occasion, and I'm fascinated by it, and I love all that shit. I love the Bob Dylan soap opera, so I'm very excited. It feels like he's sort of directly speaking to the fans, and just sort of the we're all here together, we're all what next, and I love thinking about that. I'm excited. I hope it reflects like a new direction for him to sing, maybe just sing a little more directly to his fans. I think it'd be great.
Well, okay, and just to disclose off-air discussions, to say that we spoke at length about this song is probably an understatement.
It's my fault. I'll take that. I'll own that one.
And you know, we're split. I would have to say on this. We both love Dylan, and who knows how to measure how much each of us love Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
But we're I think divided on newer Bob Dylan stuff, and you know, through our lengthy discussion, I think I've come to the conclusion that the main thing is that for me the best Dylan stuff works musically as well as it does lyrically, and at this point his songs are almost totally devoid of melody, and so yeah, just it doesn't quite work for me. I'm not, which isn't to say I think it's bad. I don't know how capable Dylan is of doing something that's truly bad, but just something that doesn't quite work for me.
There's no way to be wrong or right on that one. That is how you feel. And like you said, I think we both love Dylan. We may not love all the same stuff. You don't have to be enthused just because I am. I'm positive there are no two Dylan fans who see it all the same way. I am hopeful. I would say it. A lot of times when there's a change in direction from him, when the new thing comes, it takes a while to adjust to for me. And there's only a couple of sort of eras of his that I just haven't bonded to at all. And the Sinatra stuff I haven't really bonded with. I think I understand his point, and he can do whatever he wants. It's at this point he's earned the right to do anything if he feels like it. I just don't get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I have gotten more enjoyment out of these two songs this year than I did all 4 albums worth of Sinatra covers. So that's, I think, why I'm excited is I get it. Sinatra was great. He was the master. He was the king. Noted. Duly noted. I'm glad it holds out hope that he's willing to move on. I'm ready to. I'll put it that way.
Well, and I think your commitment in recent days to even have gone through the Sinatra stuff, well, it shows your undying love and
trying.
Yeah, I think for me there are certain eras that I'm totally on board with.
Yep.
And then some things that I have to just check out. There are times where I just have to check out, and I definitely during the Sinatra period was a time I checked out on Dylan.
Yeah, at least he had the decency to not force the Sinatra stuff to be the only playlist. Like, I wasn't super enthused by his playlists there when he was at the Beacon Theater in New York there. He was there for like 2 weeks in November. And I was looking at he did the same playlist every night, set list rather, every night. It wasn't a great one, but at least it wasn't 3 hours of fucking Sinatra covers. I will grant him that. Again, I would listen to Bob Dylan sing his Electric Bill, and I'd be content. So I guess the bar for me isn't as high, just because we were saying before when we were talking, there's only a handful of artists that I buy everything sight unseen, and when I turn it on, I expect that something enjoyable is going to happen, and he almost never disappoints me. So I guess I have confirmation bias with old Bob. You could do worse.
Yeah. I mean, there are certainly devotees that are devoted to lesser artists.
So it's been a busy week for there's lots of little singles here and there. I'm kind of proud of us. I think our Left of the Dial pod rotation for April is looking pretty good. I don't think we've ever had any bad months, but this has a good mix of the current and the classic, and it speaks well of the era we're in. You, sir, have been a busy boy in both categories, singles and albums. I do want to just be, because you've got a longer list on the singles than I do. I think we both like the Woods song, but I'll let you do that one. I just want to throw in again for there's a new single from Field Music. Field Music gets up their own ass a little bit sometimes and is a little too obscure for their own good. But when they crank, they're good. And I was really happy with Sit Tighter. That was they still have never done anything as good as In Contact. But I wanted to throw that one in, and then damn it, there's some Prince reissue stuff, some live stuff, a live EP that came out that is worth a listen. But I think you've got your list of singles is pretty long this week.
I mean, it's not huge
compared to mine.
Really, there are 3 that I want to mention, and because they're singles, like I assume that we're going to be talking more at length about this stuff later on, so I won't go too long about any of it. One thing, so I guess I'm just going to pull out 3 that I'm pretty excited about, though. So I'm pretty excited. Built to Spill has an album of Daniel Johnston covers that will be coming out. It was, I think, originally scheduled to come out about now, and got pushed back to June. but there is a new single out from it called Mountaintop. Of course, it's a Daniel Johnston song. And the album, when it comes out, will just be called Built to Spill Plays the Songs of Daniel Johnston. The single Mountaintop, I also want to mention a friend of mine. This is full disclosure, but this, I assure you, no bias here. I like the song on its own merits, but a friend of mine did direct the new Built to Spill video for this song. His name is Zach Gain. He's from Toronto, a good friend of mine, and I really like what he did a lot with the video, and I like the song, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing. I don't know what other Daniel Johnston songs will be on the album, but of course, I got to believe that that's going to be pretty great because it's great material. I mean, Daniel Johnston, I think, definitely is somebody that his songs have meant a lot to me, and so I'm excited to hear new versions of those. I think maybe the best Britpop band that never had any success in the States and would be maybe the best Britpop band that you've never heard of. Of course, that might also contain Pulp. So if you haven't heard of Pulp, then Pulp's the best Britpop band that you haven't heard of. But if you have heard of Pulp, I would say the best Britpop band that you've never heard of is Sleeper. And they have a new single out, and I hope this is going to be a full album. It's it's live at the BBC, and I hope it's a full session. But What Do I Do Now is the new single, and that is out from Sleeper. And then the aforementioned Wood single, Strange to Explain, is the other one on my list.
Have you ever seen Woods in concert?
I have not.
I would like to see them, I think. My list of current bands that I really want to see is not all that long, but Woods is on them. I think that's got to be a nice time.
Well, and Woods, I think it's also worth mentioning, was the backing band for David Berman on the Purple Mountains record.
Yeah.
And I always like to mention that album, my favorite and your favorite, I think, from last year.
Yep. Well, the publication that we dare not speak the name had a very interesting article about David Berman. I will not discuss it further because I don't want to overdo David Berman, I guess. But if you are a David Berman fan, look him up in recent stories on one of the more popular music sites, probably one that everybody could name. I want to throw in one last one because I forgot to mention is I am surprised at how good the new Psychedelic Furs is. And I admit I probably like that genre the more I don't know. I don't think that they were just they weren't like real teeny bopper band. I guess maybe more so in Britain. I thought they had pretty good indie creds. Martin Hannett produced their first record. They had some real. They have some great songwriting too. I think them being associated with the John Hughes movie Pretty in Pink probably didn't do them a ton of favors here in this country because they weren't super established before then. I think people think of
being associated with John Hughes movies. I don't think I don't think that detracts from what a band is. That's that association. Those soundtracks are great.
Yeah, I agree. Pretty in Pink is a really particularly good soundtrack. John Hughes had pretty good taste as far as new wave went.
Yeah. He had good taste actually. If you look at like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, totally different music in that, and then he had great taste there too. You have I forget who. Wheels, the Burrito Brothers song Wheels. I forget who was covering it on that, but that's on the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles soundtrack. Amy Lou Harris is on the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles soundtrack. A lot of good stuff. Totally different styles of music.
It's funny. I listened to the Some Kind of Wonderful soundtrack. Isn't everybody's favorite, but it does have Flesh for Lulu's "I Go Crazy," which is Flesh for Lulu's album, Long Live the New Flesh. I know that we don't talk about them as like guilty pleasures, but for a while I thought the pop version of punk was going to sound like Flesh for Lulu, not Green Day. And I have to say, I'm not a huge Green Day fan, but I'm glad we didn't get too much further down the Flesh for Lulu path of things. But you're right. He was the John Hughes soundtracks. Now that I'm sitting and thinking about it, they're pretty damn good. I think the new Psychedelic Furs is pretty damn good. It's not as great as like The Ghost in You or Pretty in Pink or any soap commercial or any of those great old songs. But boy, for most of these reunions, they produce not just empty shit. And when somebody comes back together and puts out something legit, it's worth remarking. So if you have any inclination towards Psychedelic Furs, grab the new one if you can.
And we both liked the new Grant Lee Phillips track as well. That's out.
Yeah, I love I never got to see Grant Lee Buffalo. I got to see Grant Lee Phillips, just a solo show, but he did a ton of Grant Lee Buffalo stuff. It was great. I really dig him. Anyway.
I saw Grant Lee Buffalo open for Paul Westerberg.
Damn. Well, all right. Well, I can't top that. I say we kick it off. I say we go into we go into the main course. I think it's time for I'm Gonna Make You Love Me.
All right. Well, we're starting off with Guided by Voices. Robert Crawford and company. I gave you a list.
Yes.
And hopefully you checked it twice.
I did. Although I will say, under other circumstances, if you were to have given me a 36-song length playlist, that would be impossible. I think with almost any other band, it would be a task I wouldn't even try. However, this band is driven by the pop idiom in a very heavy way, and they have many, many short songs that are structured the way that all like classic short pop songs are. The Letter by the Box Tops is 1 minute and 51 seconds long, if I recall correctly, depending on which CD. But I think it's like 151. There is a history of these great pop songs just being tiny little slices, and Guided by Voices does that, and they do that very well. But they also do something that I particularly appreciate, is they do short songs in the spirit the way that like the Minutemen did. So the Minutemen would do these unbelievably short songs, like 50 seconds long, 1 minute, 10 second long. And that's because they only wanted to play the good part. And Guided by Voices has some of those too, these sort of weird songs in which they don't look for the hook, the verse, chorus, verse. They're a little stranger than that. And so of all the ones we've done so far, this was the one that came closest to being stuff that I like, and the closest to making me a little embarrassed that I didn't know more of it than I did. Like, I should have liked them the whole time, and I know I overdo this topic, not you, but it's because they came to fruition during my lost years when I turned the radio off. What I'd say would be like 93, 94. I'd say the mid 90s, I completely turned off and tuned out music. Basically between Nevermind was the last album I cared about until like OK Computer. So Guided by Voices to me is lost in the dustbin of radio stations called The Buzz and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, also you might have had a hard time hearing them on the radio during that period as well. I don't know, how radio is not necessarily going to always be the place where you find things.
True.
And that might be very true of Guided by Voices. I mean, certainly true in most markets, but yeah, it might, depending on what market you would have been in, quite possibly not on the radio wherever you were at that time.
True.
And in fact, I think you were in Iowa during that time, right? So
part of it, but I lived in LA for a bit in '94 for about 6 months. Like, okay. When Weezer's Blue album came out, was new. I was in LA and I remember hearing the Undone Sweater song like every minute, like every other song. Like, LA New Wave Radio is always sort of that way, at least from what I've read. Like, they'd get onto a song and KROQ or whatever would just, once they latched onto it, they just made them LA famous. Like, there's so many great records that like are LA, all those Rodney on the Rock compilations and bands like, Gleaming Spires and all that. There's just like those awesome LA only type bands. God, it was great. Guided by Voices actually does. The dead giveaway is that Rick Ocasek produced one of their records, right?
Well, yeah, not a good one though.
Because he did the first Weezer album. He was like, the albums Rick Ocasek does are part of that genre.
But I really don't know if I don't remember all the songs I put on your list. Probably not. There probably wasn't a Rick Ocasek produced song on that list, because that's not a good album. But one, I would say Guided by Voices probably never LA famous.
Really?
And, yeah, I can't imagine it. And another thing too that I wanted to say back when we were talking about the length of the list. So the length of the playlist is 36 songs. When you're talking about Guided by Voices, the thing about 36 songs is that barely scratches the surface.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Again, I actually really I'm feeling bad because I tuned music out and I thought there was nothing going on during that time. And I only mentioned the LA stuff because like I probably wouldn't have come across any of that stuff, but in LA I did get to hear some of it, and I remember going like thinking Weezer was cool, and I still think the Buddy Holly video is great, but this stuff feels like it's sort of the same era, and I just missed all of it, and I shouldn't say all of it. I've always liked Hot Freaks from B1000, and I've always thought B1000 was a pretty good record, but I never bought it. Like, I remember hearing it. The only reason I really liked Hot Freaks, I didn't even like it really in its time. I think Blitzen Trapper covered it when I really liked Blitzen Trapper. So I'm like, oh, I should go give this stuff a listen. And then I listened to Hot Freaks again, and I still listen to Hot Freaks probably once a week. But for some reason we talked about this before the show a little bit too, is because I listen to Hot Freaks so much, it keeps putting Robert Pollard stuff in my release radar, and it puts other Guided by Voices stuff. So I did start picking up a little bit. Like, I knew Pop Zeus, and Pop Zeus has already been in a couple playlists of mine. So it's not like I didn't know anything, but I think I just am embarrassed a little bit because I really missed a bunch of stuff. And to your point, I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break because I would have felt overwhelmed if I was in a record store of where to start, because I wouldn't necessarily have known any of the songs by their titles. So I did go through your list, and I was able to whittle down a list of stuff I actually like and actually listen to. There's no charity stripe in my playlists, and there's at least a dozen songs from your list that I would say make a hardcore playlist of mine. And I enjoyed enough of it that I did pick around a little bit some of the records that weren't on your list, the whole albums. There's just so many. There's no way you could have put everything. So one of the songs, so I've already mentioned Pop Zeus and Hot Freaks. Those are both canon already, or Hot Freaks is part of the canon for me already. So one of the ones from your list that made the biggest impact on me was Motor Away. And I didn't see anything else on your playlist by it, and I didn't know that it was just a single. I thought, oh, that must be a different kind of album if it's only one song and it's that good. Well, it was just a single. There isn't no album called Motorway. It was just a single. So I went and I listened to the flip side from that, which is Color of My Blade. That was also fantastic. So it's really interesting that 1995 seems to be like right in their sort of sweet spot. B1000 is 94, and then they put out that single right afterward. There does seem to be like a stretch there where they had like I do understand, and I've read up a little about them since. I didn't really know the catalog very well, and I've read up. There are people who have like super strong devotion just to sort of that end of the catalog. And I guess I understand it because it is more consistently great, and it has a very distinct sound to it, and I'd say the sound over time has maybe become a little less distinct, but the songwriting is still pretty distinct.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Let me get to that quick. Okay. So kind of the split, I think, is known as the classic lineup versus so there's the classic lineup, the Mitch Mitchell lineup that they started with. And then what I think of, I guess, is the Doug Gillard lineup. Doug Gillard on lead guitar. I think they're both great. I like them both. Robert Pollard is kind of, he's a pretty big factor in all of this. So to me, there's a lot of consistency. What maybe is less consistent, what I would think most people see as the big difference, they were, what is known as lo-fi, because, in the early days, a lot of those were very homemade recordings, and they started out making very homemade albums, and like they were basically manufacturing their own albums for a while, producing the artwork and everything, album by album. Every single album, would be it's like a snowflake. Because they were homemade. I mean, yeah, and so eventually they started getting into the studio a bit more often. And so yeah, I mean, there is some inconsistency sound wise there, but yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, look, I have to say something which is probably offensive to fans, and I don't mean it to be offensive. This is totally naive. I do remember a little of that, and I just remember thinking like everybody is fucking a shitty ripoff of Pavement. I really did think of like the lo-fi aspect. I do remember feeling like it was interesting when Pavement did it, because I think Pavement got to it pretty organically. I mean, they nicked it from the Fall to some extent, but it wasn't contrived for them. And I think I probably just thought it was contrived when Guided by Voices did it. I just thought that was just more marketing, and if I thought that, it was wrong.
Yeah, you would have been way off, because first of all, it might be possible that Guided by Voices got there first. They were doing records. They did quite a few records before they did Alien Lanes or B1000 and were on anybody's radar. And it was just because in the early days, I mean, this wasn't Robert Pollard's day job. His day job was being a teacher, and so this was very much a hobby that turned into a career.
Yeah, I'm looking it up here. I think Pavement is like early 90s. I know that guy. I read a little. I mean, I don't know any more about Guided by Voices than you can get from Wikipedia and from the About section on Spotify. But they're concurrent. They were both around at the same time, and if I'm not mistaken, they both ended up on Matador Records at some point. Did they not?
Yeah, they both ended up on Matador Records. So the first records put out by Guided by Voices were in 1987.
Right.
And like I said, it wasn't a day job. It was a hobby.
Right. Well, you and I argue. We end up coming back to it, and I don't know how that's gonna. I don't know how this is gonna go over time, but I feel like Pavement sort of was the tip of the spear for lo-fi in terms of getting it on a wider radar. And I think I just remember at the time, I actually do, this is terrible to even say, I understand. I will lose any patrician credentials I had. Pavement, it's possible to overstate how good Pavement was. Pavement is like an A-, but not an A+, for me. I understand it. They aren't a 10 out of 10. And they are reflexively talked about as 10 out of 10, as if everything they ever did is 10 out of 10. And that is not true. It's just not true. But because now so many people have done a lot of the things that they did, the shock that Pavement represented is sort of lost to time a little bit. Just how out of sync that stuff was in its time. Like, again, if the 80s, I always say bad stuff about the 90s at the expense of the 80s, but if the 90s got one thing right, it was to reverse the Don Johnson heartbeatization of every album and look for something more real and more organic. The lo-fi as a reaction to the shitty synths of the 80s was totally needed, but I think I just lumped Guided by Voices in and I shouldn't have. I think I just thought of them as marketing, and that I got that way wrong.
Wait. Well, so I'll put it this way. Guided by Voices had 5 albums before Slanted Enchanted came out.
Right, but I think the market. I don't know if people would have known what to do with B1000 if you don't have Slanted and Enchanted. Like, I think Pavement made it easier for people to hear the music underneath of what Robert Pollard was doing. But again, you're the expert here, not me. This is just my opinion. I'm just trying to remember back why I missed them. I'm embarrassed a little bit that I did not see how good they were, because they were great. I will say I agree that B1000 is the best album that I've heard so far from them, but I did find in their last couple records a couple songs I really liked. Zeppelin Over China, I think I wouldn't say is necessarily a great album, but I thought Rally Boys was great. And then 2013 English Little League, the song Island I thought was fantastic. There's actually a couple on that I dig. So
yeah, that's why am I blanking on names now? That's not a Robert Pollard song, but it's
okay.
It's a Tobin Sprout song.
Yeah. There you go. I don't know. Robert Pollard maybe seems a little bit to me like the what Pete Townsend was to the Who. Like I don't know. He no matter what the lineup is around him, he's got a pretty strong songwriter's voice, not just a strong singing style.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely his vision, and I mean I think the other members of the band have been great. But Robert Pollard is really what you're paying the admission for.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I found instructive is I think you put Where I Come From on here from the Suitcase album. So I went back to look at that. Like, how did you figure that out? How did you figure? I mean, there's 100 songs on Suitcase, and they aren't all winners. They can't all be winners.
No, they aren't. But yeah, I mean, you just spend some time listening to them.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, that's the irony here, is because the only other artist I can think of, the only other band I can think of that has this type of being this prolific is Magnetic Fields. And boy, now that I think about it a little bit, Mr. Merritt from the Magnetic Fields is really very similar to Mr. Pollard. They are kind of contemporaries. They're extraordinarily gifted pop writers. They write in incredible quality and quantity. Magnetic Fields is most famous for an album that has 69 songs on it. And I used to think that's absolutely absurd. But then I got to the Suitcase collection, and that's 100 songs. That's one release with 100 songs. And I did try to spot check it around, and you definitely found the gem on that one, because some of that stuff I understand why it wasn't put out. But in general, the quality across the playlist was fantastic. I don't have it ranked per se, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm mentioning quick about the Suitcase, just in case it wasn't. I wasn't sure if it was clear to you or anybody that would be listening. But Suitcase is a rarities collection. It's an odds and ends sort of thing.
So anyway, I didn't spend as much time with the new. They have an album from this year, 2020 already, called Surrender Your Poppy Field, and they had an album. They had 2 albums, or I think 3. Hold on.
Well, I've already pulled tracks off of to put on our rotation list
I didn't have a chance to get through all of it, but they had 3 albums in 2019. They already have one this year. Yeah. I don't know all of it well enough to put it even in context, but I don't think the songwriting quality has gone down that much over time. I feel like you had the mid 90s, the early aughts, and then the last year or two have been pretty consistently good, I think, based on my listening anyway.
Yeah. But okay, so did you pull songs that you liked from the list?
Yep. Motor Away was way up there. Salty Salute from Alien Lanes. my top 10 ended up being after that was Glad Girls, Best of Jill Hives. I pulled Color by Blade in myself. I won't count that. My Kind of Soldier, and then Rally Boys. And then after that, I had the Boston Spaceships. I pulled Come On Baby Grace and Canned Food Demons.
I did put some of that stuff. I did put those two songs on my list that I gave you.
Yeah. That's why I got those from there,
Okay.
from you. And then I can't remember if I got. Did you put Subspace Biographies by Robert Pollard solo on there?
No.
That one I dug out. I dug that one too. I didn't. The Boston Spaceship stuff I thought was at the more accessible end of their stuff, but for some reason, whenever I would have this playlist on, it never blended all into one thing. But every time "Come On, Baby Grace" played, it jumped out. So I never looked at the listeners. Let's see. Yeah, "Come On, Baby Grace" is in their top 5 most listened to songs. So it wasn't just my ear that that jumped out. Who is Boston Spaceships? Is Robert Pollard plus who?
Well, Doug Gillard's in that band also, and the last time I saw Guided by Voices. So in recent years, they did go back to the classic lineup for the anniversary of B1000, and then stayed with that lineup for a while, and then it was back to the Doug Gillard lineup. And the last time I saw them live, it was with the Doug Gillard lineup, and they did some of the Boston Spaceship songs. I'm pretty sure they did "Come On, Baby Grace" as one of those with Guided by Voices. So yeah, Boston Spaceships was, I don't know if the whole lineup's consistent with the later Guided by Voices lineup, but basically Boston Spaceships was around the time where Guided by Voices had reunited the classic lineup. And so then Boston Spaceships was pretty much the later Guided by Voices lineup by a different name. So I've seen a lot of those songs played as under the guise of Guided by Voices.
So can they bring it live? Can they really play?
Oh yeah. The live show's an experience because there are a lot of stage antics, a lot of Pollard likes to do a lot of high kicking, and he still does this in his advanced age.
Holy crap.
And he does a lot of mic swinging, and he drinks heavily. And there's no other way to put it. Like it's always interesting to see how much alcohol is consumed on the stage.
Is he a weird dude? Is he a bad hang?
I don't think so. I don't know him personally. But he seems like a pretty normal, everyday sort of guy. He once threw a no-hitter, I believe, in community college. Wow. That is a well-known trivia fact. He was a school teacher. I forget what grade he taught. And then went from being a school teacher to a rock star.
I know you hate questions like this. I'm sorry, but what celebrities are big fans of Guided by Voices?
Well, I don't know if I hate them so much as I have no idea. I don't.
Okay. Because sometimes when a band like this that has such a huge catalog, they have some celebrity somewhere who's like a super fan.
Yeah.
And I generally like to know that before investing.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the significance is. I guarantee you, there's an answer to that somewhere.
All right, I'll look it up. I'll figure it out.
If only there was some sort of
device
that maybe connected.
Right. Where all the information is.
Yeah,
that would be called show prep. See, you've gone to a bridge too far there. Oh, I didn't want to spoil it though. I didn't want to read. I've said this I think before. It fucking infuriates me. Every once in a while, I will run into. Again, I'm old, so everybody's younger than me at work, and I get to talk into music, and I could get someone to listen to a song and something and finally get them to take one of my recommendations, and they always go online to look at what the song lyrics mean instead of trying to figure it out for themselves. I fucking hate it. So I decided not to do that here.
Well, see, by that token, by that argument you just made,
Oh, come on.
You should understand me on a much deeper level than.
I do that I listen without. It's more a George Michael thing. I want to listen without prejudice in volume
exactly.
in volume 1, but by volume 2, I'm allowed to bring any bullshit I want to the experience. I try to take the stuff on their own terms, at least to start. But over time, you have to have context to understand the work. We're never going to agree on this, but it's fine. We're gonna there's reason to keep going. Anyway, I will just wrap by saying I actually want to come back later because I think I will make a good Guided by Voices fan, but it's going to take me a long time to get through the enormity of the catalog to figure out the eras and the sounds and the sort of the woo-woo of them. But I found enough. I'm sorry, keep going.
Well, I would say to you or anybody, you want to start with B1000 and Alien Lanes, and then branch out from there.
Game of Pricks is by far their most listened to song on Spotify, and I get it. I do think for such a popular song, it has a little bit of it's a little more angular than your average popular song. Like it's a pop song for sure, but it's got some weird angles on it. It's just got a slight little wobble to it that a lot of this stuff has, and that is exactly what makes it interesting. That's why I will put in the work, is because I'm sure at some point I'll sort of figure out his devices and his language and the way he does these things. But to sort of the untrained ear, to the naive ear, there's it's hard to do the pattern recognition. There's things aren't always where you expect them to be, and they don't always go where you expect them to go. And that's still, I haven't figured out the pattern in that yet. It's still very interesting when it does not do the expected, and maybe it just does expected for them, and I just don't understand what that is yet. But for now, I think the fact that they have such great command over the standard pop rock format and choose not to just do faithful replication of it, but there's just a slight warp to it that makes it very magnetic for me. Bad choice of words today, but that's what I mean. Is I'm very much interested in sort of trying to understand the weirdness of it, and it's familiar enough that it's not off-putting at all. It seems very interesting. So I want to come back later when I have a little better command of things, but I think this is an oversight on my part that I didn't give them a chance in their time. I was kind of an asshole about it at that time. I sort of just gave up on the radio,
Well, okay, so the songs that you mentioned are mostly in the later stretches, or the those are mostly like
21st century stuff. I did look, but
yeah.
You can't deny that B1000 is a great album for any band. Like they don't have another album that's quite that good.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what the absolute best era for overall output is, you go back to 1992 with Propeller, and then 93 Vampire on Titus, then B1000's 94, Alien Lane's 95, Under the Bushes, Under the Stars 96. I think that stretch is the absolute best period for the band. But you're not wrong. I mean, of course, those are songs I put on my list, so of course you're not wrong about any of the songs that you mentioned. But it does leave out, I think what is the best stretch for the band.
Wow. Well, I got to go back then, because
I mean, Motorway is in that period, but the other stuff that you mentioned is mostly later than that.
Wow. Well, look, the lo-fi stuff is fatiguing on the ear. When did you pick them up? How did you find them?
Well, around B1000.
Right. As I was at work I worked at college radio at the University of Iowa in like 92, 93. And I'm trying to remember if I even saw their records come through the radio station at that time. That was still very heavy, Nirvana, grungy stuff still at 92, 93.
Yeah, I'm trying. Well, okay, so Alien Lanes was the first one that was on Matador. That was 95. B1000 was pre-Matador. So yeah, they probably didn't get any play on college radio until being on Matador.
Yeah, that was after my time. But why it's interesting to know that they were making that stuff back then during the peak of grunge, because you cannot say that they were trying to be grungy. You can't say that they were glomming on to what was popular. Like they had to make this popular. Although maybe Flaming Lips helped them a little bit. But
my personal feeling is that if they had never signed a deal with Matador or anybody, they still would have had songs. It would have, I think it would have been like a lifelong hobby if it never ended up being a career. So I don't think they were ever really doing it with record sales in mind. It just happened that way.
Yeah.
I don't quite remember the story anymore, but they I think maybe landed the Matador deal after getting the opportunity to do some shows at CBGB's. And but that opportunity to play there just was a thing that came out of left field.
Well, I'm happy anytime a genuinely weird person or a genuinely weird impulse from a normal person finds its way into the popular conscience. And I suspect Robert Pollard is like one of the people capable of that. Like able of reaching sort of little square end of the music spectrum with some weird shit and sort of draw them deeper into music that way. He's like a good gateway drug into the weird. So that is why I owe him a much deeper listen, because those are usually the people I like the most. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you, Flick. Thank you.
You are welcome. And
glad I could help.
Glad to get you on board. Glad to get anybody else on board that might be coming on board now. You're welcome. You're welcome on board. That is, I'm not being a smart ass and saying, "Oh, you're welcome."
It was.
But I'm saying, come on board the train, the Guided by Voices train.
You mean the Quad City DJs? Come on, ride the train with Michelle, Tamika, and Tanya. That's what I would like. You not a fan of the Quad City DJs?
I'm the uninitiated.
Oh, come on, ride the train.
But isn't that the only one that anybody knows?
Yes.
All right.
It's not the Iowa Quad City. That was a big point of confusion. I gotta say, is they're the Quad City DJs, but not the Quad City DJs. You know what I mean?
I didn't know that. So what Quad Cities are they from?
It's somewhere in the South somewhere. I don't know, like Georgia or somewhere. If only there was a device.
Yeah. Well.
All right, up next, it's your turn, son. A band that I consider indie royalty, and I was a little worried that they weren't already on your radar. I felt a lot of pressure. I can't change the catalog now, but boy, they check so many boxes that I associate with your hotspot. I'm hoping I was able to at least bring you somewhat into the light.
Yeah, I mean I totally know why you picked them. I totally get it. And yeah, there definitely are concentric circles working here, but between these two artists, a lot of these songs are lo-fi, very home recorded sounding, and short, brief, and to the point,
plentiful,
yeah. And I do say I'll start off with, I did see this kind of the same idea at work in all of these songs, where it's sort of take a 60s pop sort of idea and then make it noisy, sort of make it shoegazy, add some noise rock to it. And then usually add some kind of joke, like the object of the song is kind of a joke, and so I did see that thread running through pretty much all of these songs.
Well, I mean, in the case of the album Distortion, he was deliberately trying to do an homage to Psycho Candy. So he definitely took his just standard song format and drenched it in distortion. And I guess a little on the nose as far as a concept goes, but it was an homage to Jesus' Mary Chain. You're not wrong, but he's always been accused of going for, like, he used to be accused of being too synthy and too prone towards using the sort of old analog synth sound. So I think even he would admit that he writes a certain style song, and the albums are arrangements of those songs more than they are completely different statements of their thing, you know?
Yeah, but the core of the song always seemed to be sort of a 60s pop tune.
Oh, yeah.
I'll say 60s style pop tune. Yeah, so going through the ones I like, Strange Powers, Young and Insane, and Distortion, yeah, that was, as an album, that was the stuff that worked for me the most. You know, and so just going through that just as examples. So like with Three Way, you know, it's basically a surf rock tune, a very nudge wink wink sort of surf rock tune, and then adding the distortion on it and making it a shoegazy 60s surf rock tune. And then from there, the next song in your list was California Girls, which it was taking the idea of the Beach Boys' California Girls, but definitely not the same ones that Mike Love was singing about. It was sort of maybe more of a realistic portrayal of what the California Girls are, the more superficial type of California Girls.
Bite your tongue, but yes, there's some East Coast West Coast heat there. Magnetic Fields are about as Boston as you could get, or at least that's my perception of them.
Sure.
And yeah, there's a little heat there with California, but
the song is called California Girls,
right? But the chorus is "I hate California girls."
Right. That's what I was saying. It's taking the idea and subverting it. You know,
sure.
It's not California girls are great. It's California girls are not so great. They suck. They're superficial. They have attitudes, you know, and that sort of thing. And I'm not saying attitudes like, you know, have poor attitudes.
Well, I think Distortion sold as well in California as anywhere else. That's all I'm saying.
Well, no, but what the premise of the song is all I'm talking about here.
True enough.
Yeah. And the premise of the song is basically that California girls, the chorus, you know, of the song is, I hate California girls.
Yeah. He does.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm talking out of school on that one.
It's true.
All right. So then Drive on Driver, which was I really liked that one melodically. One of my favorite songs on the list. And then I'll Dream Alone, which is another 60s pop type song. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the continuing theme. Then off of 69 Love Songs, I liked Papa Was a Rodeo quite a bit. I have to say, Fido, Your Leash is Too Long was definitely one that didn't work for me very well. Very, very much reminded me of the song Popcorn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So 69 Love Songs, I think, again, I don't want to pretend that I'm an expert on magnetic fields, because I actually, when I read a lot of what the other fans are into and like from them, it's not always the stuff that I love. 69 Love Songs is sort of the centerpiece, I think, of the catalog. I think it's the way in for most people, even though it's got literally 69 songs and they're all unified only in that they are about love. There's no way for me to accurately represent the full scope of the album without putting 30 songs on there from it. Fido, Your Leash is Too Long, I included mostly to make a point about the range of the album, not necessarily asking you to find that beloved.
Yeah, Yeah, we shouldn't get bogged down with that one. I don't think.
Because Papo's a Rodeo, I know, has been covered by I think Bright Eyes has covered that.
Yeah, I could see that.
And then Book of Love is sort of the it's the alt wedding song. Like if you're too cool for like hair metal ballads at your wedding and you're a bit alternative, the Book of Love is, I guess, from what I understand, is a big hit now in weddings. Peter Gabriel covers it too, and he actually does a pretty good job. Book of Love didn't reach you?
I don't know. Like most of these songs didn't seem very sincere to me, so I guess I didn't look at Book of Love as being sincere.
I'm going to ask you to give that song, if nothing else, go back and listen to it and imagine it's sincere, and it may unlock some of the other stuff for you. But I get your point. You're not the only one who would say that.
Okay. Okay, so I guess the stuff that was on 69 Love Songs, like I have to say again, Distortion was the one I definitely liked. Off of 69 Love Songs, When My Boy Walks Down the Street, that was a good one. And then The Luckiest, or no, actually The Luckiest Guy on the Lower East Side was one I didn't like. Let me see.
That is I don't know, that one comes up quite a bit. Like if I was to look up Magnetic Fields covers, I'd be surprised if that wasn't one of the bigger ones. But you're entitled to, yeah.
Yeah, that one had a lot to do with the instrumentation. Yeah, I don't know. 69 Love Songs didn't work for me as well as Distortion did, for sure. Then let me see. I don't remember what album this would have been off of. The Saddest Story Ever Told, I liked a lot. That was very that was like elements of Phil Spector and Mamas and Papas, and I liked that a lot.
Yeah, that's I think Wayward Bus, if I'm not mistaken. They have a huge I mean, look, really the one hard thing I had to do here is he just put out another EP while we were doing this, and like for him it's an EP, but I think it's literally got like 15 songs on it. I'm not kidding. Like I don't know I don't know how to handle I basically got to the same place you got to with Guided by Voices. Is there is so much there that I couldn't accurately represent every album or every phase. I would say if I cheated you out of any part of it, it would be the stuff before 69 Love Songs, the first 3 or 4 records. I think those were all on Merge, if I'm not mistaken. I think I maybe cheated you a little bit out of that, but to your point, there is a continuity with all of it. You know what I mean? Like in some ways I can't represent all of it, but in other ways, if you heard one, you heard them all, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't, at least for the songs on the list, like I felt there was definitely definitely themes at work in all of them. You know, like it was, I'm not saying there's a sameness to it, but just that it was a certain math equation with a different result on these songs. And the math equation was always the same, but the answer might be different.
Yeah, I don't think even they would argue this point. I think they're at a point now where the themes of the records are like an excuse to make an album. There's basically there's a thing that is there's a thing that they do. And I literally think so. Like again, Distortion was deliberately done where he was like, I don't want to misrepresent his words, but as I recall, at the time it was like, I can't do another album of 69 love songs. Like I write primarily love songs, but I have to have something else to do other than just do love song collections. And so the making a theme out of how the album was arranged. The next album right after it was called Realism, and it was all stripped down with all of that stuff out of there. It was an organic record. Again, the song structure's the same. I did include You Must Be Out of Your Mind from that album, Realism, but it was the cousin of Distortion. Like they think even the cover art of the two of them references each other. It's absolutely about the arrangement. And I I'm not surprised. I think I've been trying to get you to listen to Distortion for a while, if I'm not mistaken. I'm actually tickled that you seem to like that one the best, because I'm the same way.
I would say, I would say that is a pronounced favorite here to me.
All right, well, I'll be happy if you ever find your way back to it organically. I couldn't just put all the songs from Distortion on there. I tried to put a mix of the different sort of themes that he uses throughout. But I definitely would say, even if you take nothing else, go back and give the whole album a listen and see if it gives you the feels.
All right, well, that will be my next step.
Flick, you know what it is? You had to have listened to. There's no way to have avoided the magnetic fields, especially they were on Merge Records. They've been huge this whole time.
Yeah, no,
you just never bonded.
For sure, for sure. I've heard them in bits and pieces here and there, drips and drabs. Definitely. This was the first time I've listened to them at length, though.
Yeah, I'll be interested, and I don't solicit. I solicit fans more than I solicit fan mail, I guess. But if I'd be interested to see if anybody thought I did a misrepresented the catalog. I don't think I did. I think I got it right, and I think you got it right. And you either really like it or you don't. I think they have a very literary. It's very East Coast. It's very Northeast. It's a little cringy at times. I guess, but if you like his thing, he's a master songwriter, in my opinion. At least that's my read. I've never seen them in concert. I have no idea if the Magnetic Fields can play or not. I suspect not. Distortion is like a studio grade, I think.
I'm sure.
All those years of seeing shows, you never ended up at a festival with them or anything?
No.
No, never crossed paths. Well, I have no idea if they can play. All right, we're gonna have to pick. I don't think we've picked out our next "I'm Gonna Make You Love Me" bands. Have we?
Well, I think the next one I'll give you will be Spoon.
All right. Well, that's an uphill battle because I've tried with them before. I'm gonna try to listen without prejudice, as I say, as George Michael says. I try very hard to listen without prejudice. I'm gonna have to work on mine for you. I don't know exactly what it's gonna be, but I know it is going to be. Maybe Stereo Lab. Let's do Stereo Lab next.
Okay. I already like Stereo Lab, but well, no. I mean, we talked about this before. I already like Stereo Lab, but could use more background on them.
All right. They're together again, and I believe they were going to play some reunion shows if we had not had COVID mania. And so this is of the essence, because if I can get you into the Stereo Lab orbit, there's a chance of actually seeing them.
All right, so right now, as you can probably tell, our audio is getting bad on Rudy's end. So we are going to close the show here. We'll be back in another week. We don't have a topic decided as of yet, but we'll have something good for you next week on Left of the Dial.